Hello and welcome, my friends, to another stream of Adobe Live. I'm your host, Kieran Lewis, a freelance designer from London. And on today's stream, we have the character designer, illustrator, Chris Blackstock. Chris, how you doing, my man?
Doing very well. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I know this is not your first rodeo. Everyone in the space, we know who you are, but we're still going to do an
Yeah,
intro as we go
not
into
my first rodeo. You're right. You're right.
it. Hello, my friends, to anyone who's tuning in on YouTube or Behance. As always, massive welcome. I can see Wade, Paolo, and many more folks. So yeah, as always, any questions you have for Chris while he's in the design flow, please do send it your way. And just a little reminder for you lovely folks, if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to the Adobe Live on Instagram, because I promise you, you won't regret it. At Adobe Live, you'll see underneath me on the thumbnail. So on that note, Chris, I think it's time just to jump in to say who you are and what you'll be working on for today's stream.
Yeah, definitely. Like Kieran said, my name's Chris Blackstock. I'm a character designer, visual development artist in the entertainment industry. I currently work on the Young Jedi Adventure show, which is super fun as a model designer. Yes, very fun. And today we're going to be doing a fun stylistic illustration specifically for a print. Maybe you can sell online or sell at a convention. For me, I'm going to be at Lightbox this year. So this is kind of a fun project for me to kind of create this for my Lightbox table. So very excited.
That's sick, man. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I have many questions to kind of unravel as we go through the stream. The first one being, how awesome is your job role? But I mean, I feel like I'll leave it for the chats to start pushing that through.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how much I can talk about, but it's
of course, very and yeah, it's all official. But we can never talk about your design process. That's something we definitely can do. And I can see we got Wade already saying Lightbox hype in capital letters. So we're excited to sort of see the work to come.
Well, cool. Do you want me to? Yeah, let me can bring up my website really quick.
Yeah, of course. The background
preview. Yeah, give me a second here. Oh, you're not going to pop up. Let's see. There we go. Okay.
Nice.
All right. So it's kind of a fun illustration right in the beginning. And this was this is before I got the job. I had a lot of free time figuring out like how putting a portfolio together. And this was a fun piece of always imagining my kids and how they work and their mind, their imagination. And we're always playing with Legos. So this was kind of like a fun thing of like, as you're playing, like what's, how are you actually imagining it? So
of course. Nice.
But yeah, this is some of my character design work. Yeah, this guy's and actually I worked on this character on one of the Adobe Live sessions. And so this guy's Remo Malium. He's a alien wildlife biologist.
I love how you said it so casually. Like, I love that. It's like, these are genuine, like, should be job roles on LinkedIn. I feel like, why are they not if they're not, right?
Yeah. And so, it's like, as I'm doing this stuff, it's all kind of this was all really for portfolio. So it's like expressions, turnarounds, the full hero pose, kind of some actions. We've got some props, his ray gun, his walkie-talkie. He's even got this little alien attachment that gives him, supervision. And then this was a fun kind of action, what's it look like a day in the life? And he's running around on his rhinoculus.
Rhinoculus. 10 points of creativity. I love that.
Yeah. So in this, just some other character work, exploring shapes and design, really pushing the proportions. And this is another piece I actually worked on Adobe Live as well. A little background piece.
That's a good time to say a little bit of everyone wants to rewatch the Chris's Adobe Lives on these ones. You can, after the stream, of course, you can rewatch some of them because he's done many. So definitely check those out. Just quick, we've got Wade who said, well, if you draw it, it's real. That's how things work, right? I love that. Yes, that's definitely how things work. If it doesn't,
thank you, Wade. Yeah, this one's one of my favorites. It was like the idea of this alien coming down to Earth and having zero idea of how to be human, but he's close. He's got a cardboard box with two eyes and a nose, and
he's got a tie. Yeah. I mean, that's
he's got a tie. He's kind of pieced together some shirt and pants. So, but yeah, a little bit of my work, and yeah. All right,
nice. And then today's stream, what are we gonna be looking into today? Into your mind?
Okay, so oops, let me get that back to where it was. So I've got kind of, I'll show you right away where we're headed. It's not finished, but this is kind of where we're headed today. I did a lot of stuff ahead of time just because I know by now that these streams go by at
You know
lightning
how it
speed.
works.
Yeah.
You know.
So the focus really was mainly only have one or two characters, some type of narrative interaction, and then like a set piece. But I try to keep it as simple as possible. I kind of wanted to eliminate the background and just have it to be more of like a silhouette and something that is also borderless. So when you go to print it, it'll be like this nice image on that white paper.
Nice.
So there won't be any issues with bleed or anything like that. Okay. So how did we get here?
Yeah.
Obviously the first part is the brainstorming process. And I kind of set those parameters early on and came up with some sketches. So this is the blue sky part, right? It's just like, what can I, what would be fun? What can I make? What would be engaging? So as sometimes happens, the first illustration in the top left corner, that's what I ended up going with, but the idea was kind of this.
Good explore, right?
This kid kind of like stumbling upon this cave, or maybe he was searching for it and kind of got these little goblins or whatever there. The next idea was maybe this like big giant rising up out of the jungle. Kind of got these little monkeys here, big vines he's kind of pulling up, probably not the brightest monster in the world, but and then the third one here was kind of just like more of like a shepherd and its companion. Another simple one too, and kind of also at the same time keeping the idea like these are all they're almost all gonna be like a silhouette or shape, right, sitting on the white. And then the last one was maybe intergalactic explorer on a new planet, realizing that they can breathe, and these little floating bugs.
I mean, I'm kind of in awe already of the illustration, and that's without the color. Like just everything in terms of just the structure, and it's looking sharp, man, already. And then you add the color to make it, bring to life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so it's like we've got 4 ideas now. You can go, it's always great to, I guess I'd say sometimes the more ideas the better, but that's why I usually like to set parameters before I get too deep into it, because depending on your time and what you're trying to do, and since I was trying to keep this simple, blue sky can really be too much sometimes. Sure. And so if you have parameters ahead of time, it kind of helps keep your focus. And so talked with the wife, and she's like, go with the first one. I was like, that was I love that feeling. Yeah. If you don't trust your gut, ask somebody that you trust. Of course. And so we went with that, and so we kind of just blew it up. And also this is a really quick, this is an 8x10 format. I believe it is 300 DPI. Let's see. It could be higher. I don't know. Oh, you know what? I went 600. I was smart. So, yeah,
600, nice.
600. There we go. We got 600 pixels per inch. So that's great. So that is going to be plenty for when we go to print.
Cool. Get us on a billboard if we wanted to as well. I think it's going to be super sharp.
Decent size. I'm wondering why my computer was running so slow. And so so when you get the original sketch out and you kind of lay it out, and this is the time when we're kind of seeing how it fits on the page. I liked the positioning, and so now kind of begins the sketching phase, like the final, like this the second part, right? We did our initial sketch, but now we need to kind of refine it. And so let's see.
I'm going to ask as well, because again, this is so out of my realm in terms of the space that I'm more editorial, but I'm always in awe when I see illustrators and how they operate and work. Everything you sort of sketch, is it straight from tablet to computer, or do you have like an array of sort of notepads and pens you kind of draw as you go along? What's your kind of methodology when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started out using digital, I definitely was still, I was so traditional that I almost did none of my sketching or preliminary work on the computer. It was almost all done. And back then, this is probably 10 years ago or so. Gosh, even more now. I would pencil everything out, and then I would ink, and then I would scan it and do digital colors. Nowadays, it just, like we were saying earlier when we got to talk earlier, is I've got 2 children, I've got a full-time job, so it's like I try to keep it all digital. If I know it's going to end up that way, or if I want it to have something that's not digital intentionally, then I would do it off the computer, scan it in or whatever, maybe textures, or I just like the ink better. But for the most part, for me, I try to just keep it on the computer so I can kind of run right through it and not have to have any extra steps.
So to kind of streamline the process. No, I like that. Cool.
Yeah. And so with that initial, and since you asked that, since that initial sketch, I'll show you the brush that I use. And these are just kind of my brushes that I have that I've just kind of been collecting. I don't know where some of them came from.
I love that. You got so many. He's just like,
yeah, like some of them, like, I don't know. I like it. I'm not sure where I got it.
It looks
from,
good.
But
it's there.
Yeah. And once you get your set, save it somewhere, because there's too many times where there's been a glitch or an update, and then all of a sudden my brush set is gone. So save it onto your computer.
Chris, are you a hoarder of brushes? I'm just gonna say, do you hoard brushes on your computer?
It depends. Like I'll get brushes, like brush sets, and then usually what happens is I'll slowly integrate them, because having too many, it kind of gets overwhelming. So I have a few that I really like. Nice. So for sketching, usually I'll use this if I want to do these, especially these early on ones. You can kind of get, and it's a nice, you can get really thin but really thick, but it keeps it, I don't have to get as detailed with it, and I can kind of be really loose and fun with it. So I'll either use that for like these big ones, or I'll use this kind of pencil. It actually feels like a pencil. It's kind of great. Nice. So for that one, I used my soft texture brush, and then I went over it, and you can kind of see this as it fades back. You can kind of see
very cool
the adjustments I made. So on the original, we had these goblins, and I was like, I would like to have maybe one central character instead. Something hiding behind the rock like they were, but maybe bigger shape. So we got rid of them, and as you notice, his head was looking into the cave, which I liked, but it's nice to kind of see some of the character's face. And so I was like, how could I integrate that? And it also adds maybe a little bit more to the story. And so that's where we kind of get him, looking up over at this tail that he sees. So this is
Chris. What's inside that? What's inside? I mean, I don't know if it's top secret NDA, but what's inside the cave? What's inside? I see the eyes, but is it?
Yeah, I mean, so those little eyes in my mind, those little eyes are this guy's kids, right?
Minions. Kids. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. As all these little kids are living inside this, this is kind of like their little home. And
okay. I smell sweet when you say it like that. I love that. It smells sweet. It's not as dark as I
mean, yeah, baby snakes are way more venomous than, because they can't control the venom. But true. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I kind of came up with the whole idea of him. He's searching for these animals. He's got some bones in his bag here. So maybe, he's kind of seeking them out. He's obviously been traveling a little bit. He's bandaged up.
He's seen a lot.
Yeah, he's been through some stuff. So it started out as maybe it was like somebody kind of wandering through the jungle and stumbling upon this cave too. This time around, it felt more intentional. And he's maybe seeking these guys out. So, all right. So we get to that stage. We're at what's mostly our final sketch. And so then after that, we're going to look at kind of color blocking.
Nice.
And so
I guess quite curious. And again, any questions, my friends, regarding Chris's design process, what you see on screen, even the tools as well, and you're quite curious, please do throw those in the chat. But just to kind of get the ball rolling, I'm quite curious. Do you because seeing the sketches here, do you in your mind kind of know already color? I know obviously color palettes will come a lot later in the line, but do you kind of know when you're drawing, thinking, oh, this would already be quite a cool shading before you even get to that stage of experiment? It almost intertwines with the sketching and the colors because you kind of know you've done it so many times.
I mean, here, I can just show you like what I would do normally. Here, let me just throw it on top. Is I would start just laying it out, So if I just use a little lasso tool, nice. And you can kind of start doing basic, doesn't have to be perfect. And I kind of have an idea of maybe the colors I want, maybe a little bit more. And so you can kind of start to figure it out. But yeah, basically I would block everything in with color, with flat colors, because what I'm going to be doing is using a lot of masks, clipping masks to add shadow, light, texture, all kinds of stuff. So this initial is just kind of blocking out my shapes that I'm going to be rendering in. And so that's really what I start to think about, is they're really just shapes.
Whilst you're doing that, I put in the chat, let us know what folks think could be in that cave. 10 points for the most creative. And we've got Paolo who said it's a portal for Adobe Express.
It should be a portal. Okay, it's a portal.
I love that. You're winning so far. I mean, yeah, it could be anything, right? But that's the beauty of it. That's hilarious. Portal for Adobe Express. No, it's cool to see what you're doing, man.
Yeah, so I would block all these colors out, and maybe even before then, because I'm a big line guy, and this piece itself is going to be a balance between line work and just painting, probably in more of a direct reflection of how a lot of animated films get made, 2D animated films, where you have your cell shaded characters, if you think of like Studio Ghibli work with Spirited Away and all this stuff, and then you've got these beautifully painted backgrounds that they're moving on top of, and so that animated work is going to be less detailed because it's constantly moving, and so you're painting every frame. But these sets are going to be, they don't need the line work. You can paint them out, paint the light on. And so what I did was I went ahead and did like a final line work, right? And I'll initially do these lines in black. And so you can see though it's not black anymore, right?
Yeah.
But this will initially be done in black. And once I have everything kind of really laid out, then I can start to refine those shapes. You can start to see.
Very cool.
I start to get these colors that I've
that sort of
settled on.
Haircut style, I love it.
Yeah.
If you know what that show is, but anyway, that's a whole different topic. But,
yes.
Okay,
yes.
wicked. I'm not alone. It's looking good.
So
cool.
So this is kind of the beginning, right? Where we're blocking in our shapes. Everything's really defined, but we're probably not going to keep all of that line work. Like the line work on those plants, we're probably not going to end up keeping. Because I really do want only the two main characters to have that line work.
Defined features. Yeah.
Yeah. And so once I have my colors laid out, and it's generally where I want them. Actually, I think I've got some rocks. Let me find them. My little baby rocks. There they are. There they are.
Nice.
And so the next thing I would do after this, and is I would kind of start to look into light, and mostly I'll block in my shadows first. And so, let's start with the boy. And you will start to see, and this is kind of a really subtle shadow. With a lot, I don't want to get too harsh with any of the lighting, because like I said, I kind of want the graphic style of this to kind of really show through. But you can see the lighting there.
Is there a bit of green in there? I feel like the reflection of maybe the plants.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Right. So
very
that water, nice. Right. So you're going to kind of see it's a little bit warmer up here. And then as you come down here, it kind of cools off.
Nice.
So we've got our boy, the shadow. And then if we zoom back out, we've got our monster. And then I even pushed him back. And I'll do these are all clipping masks, by the way. So these shadow layers I usually do reduced opacity around anywhere from 30 to 50%.
Yeah.
And I'll put it on a multiply layer so that it kind of absorbs those colors underneath.
Just on that, do you find like it's a bit of an experimental stage where you're kind of going through changing opacities quite often, or changing the effects quite a bit, and just to sort of see how the character, do you find yourself kind of lost in that? I guess you know so quickly now because you do it all the time, but
exactly. No, but it's true. I mean, each piece is a little bit different, and so I usually like to start with it with less contrast and then build that contrast as I work. Sometimes I'll just up the opacity, or I'll just add another clipping mask on top of that and darken it on top, and kind of just do it multiple layers to kind of really build it up. Like I said, this one, I'm trying to do as little of that as possible, and really just kind of like, I'll show you with kind of adding this. I don't know if you guys can see that gradation on top here. And it's kind of starting to darken it. And what that's going to do is it's going to push that character back a little bit and bring the focus. And then later on, you can kind of see how I can bring focus to that.
It's amazing how that transition of lighting, right, and shadows, kind of how it makes our eyes kind of see characters almost like an arrange, the arrange tool where it's like center back. It's just your brain tells you how further away is an object.
It's bizarre. Yeah, it's like you use those cool tones and it instantly pushes those objects back. And so let's see here what else we got. Okay, so now this part. So now we've got the water down here, and this is kind of an important one. So with this, this is a really cool brush that I've been using for the water, which is probably not normally done, but it's this really cool, you can see it.
Brush. It's nice.
Yeah, it's a really nice brush. And so I was using that for the shadows, and then even with these reflections, that it's a lot of texture, but I really like it with contrasting with the character. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I do really like it. It's not as glassy or glossy as you usually get water, but it seems to work for this situation.
I've got a question actually still, just because I'm curious about the one thing I've seen when I've seen how illustrators kind of operate is perspective. Like that's something that seems to be that getting that right perspective. Is there a particular challenge that you find that you're kind of working on, or even something you're just unsure about when it comes to the character design, where you're a bit like it just takes maybe a bit more time to refine? Is there anything that you, for anyone maybe who's actually in the chat and quite curious about this process or curious about the role itself?
Yeah, I mean, with something like this, it's very limited perspective, right? This is like a 1 point perspective, right? It's a straight on shot. Everything kind of, everything's closing in on this point in the back behind it. So really, only thing you'd really have to worry about with something like this is that you're getting, let me just pull up, let me show you. you want to just make sure that your ellipses, you know, so this, you want to make sure those all kind of match up with each other, you know, because if you have this big thing here, but then this is like this, it's gonna look, this is gonna look kind of weird and feel really out of yeah. Or if you do it like this and it's almost too much. So since this is a pretty limited perspective, there's not too much that you have to think about with this. I mean, perspective is everything, especially as an illustrator, and it's something you should study as much as possible. You know, really dynamic illustrations have incredible perspective. And there's ways to cheat it, and just, you know, sometimes having perfect perspective doesn't look that great. Like there's plenty of times, you know, where it's like you kind of have to, it's just like doing figure drawing or something. It's like you don't want to draw exactly what's in front of you. You know, because sometimes what's in front of you doesn't look so great, right?
Who wants
you want to manipulate it. Yeah. You want to manipulate it. You're illustrating it. So you want to add something to it. You want to tweak and distort and kind of make it special.
Make it your own. I got a comment from Mohammed actually, who said, and I guess it's kind of going back to maybe the beginning of our stream when you did your process, but he said, what are the illustration life cycle process steps for an artwork project? Where to begin? So we're going back to what you said previously about, you know, the sketching and then transition.
Yeah. So, you know, basically where I would start as you're doing your sketch, right? And this is where and when you're doing the sketching, you're brainstorming. And sometimes I go, oops, running out of space there. Sometimes those go hand in hand. Sometimes it just depends on who you are as an artist. Like I like to sketch as I'm brainstorming. That's kind of, I don't always know what I want or what I'm trying to get out. And so, you know, I can just start sketching and then that's going to start leading to other ideas. And so after that, you get your sketch. And then once you kind of finalize it, then you're going to do, you know, like a final sketch, great writing and composition. So, and so we have that, right? We did our brainstorm, we got our sketch, and now this is our, you know, our final composition. We have our final sketch. You know, for me, after that, it was the, you know, final line work. And color shapes. So that was when I did my inking and then blocked those in. I usually try to use the lasso. I used to not use the lasso at all to fill in. I would just be sitting there, which I love. I love the process of, you know, like drawing it in. But I just noticed that it was, so I really try to do lasso as much as possible on that initial stage, and you get a really nice clean line when you do it that way. So sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. It just depends on what you're going for. So then after you have those color shapes, and then I would start looking at my lighting and what, you know, where my lighting's coming from. And so that's what, so lighting direction, which is going to give you your shadow shapes. Nice. So that's when you start blocking in your shadows. So once you have that, from there, after my shadow shapes, and this is all, you know, this is all kind of loose. Like you can do it like that, but sometimes, you know, as I'm painting, I'm like, ooh,
crossover, right? Of just
maybe like I just like I need some textures right now, you know, like maybe I need to work on these textures, and that's going to help me, you know, like on this rock, like maybe I need to look at those textures to see how that's going to affect my light, you know, and my lighting, the surf, what's the surface really look like? How is it going to reflect that light, or how's it going to create those shadows? So those can kind of go, your textures and your shadows, you know, you could add textures in earlier if you want, like after your color shapes, you can start to add your textures. That's totally fine. I can show you some of the textures that I've got here. Let's see. got a lot of layers. And I
say you
organized
gotta
it.
have
I
it. I was gonna say
organized it.
I saw that and I'm like the subfolders that dude. I feel like you need to be right. Otherwise, you can't find that
Yeah.
rock that you put in a hard place to find and whatever. No pun
So
intended. But yeah, it's pretty
we'll
cool.
go to the boy here to see some of these textures.
Just going back to
So he's
Mohammed's
got,
question. Hopefully that helps.
yep.
That helps your question, Mohammed, in terms of the process. So yeah, keep those questions coming in, my friends. Great to know.
So here we've added some freckles, and then we're gonna add some kind of like the wet, wet texture that he's been going through this water, these swamps. And then I've got another textures here that's blank, and we can actually just do some right now if we wanted. I wanted to do a little bit of this bag, because this bag's also going to be it's going to be a little bit wet. I probably have some
the crumpled paper, right? I don't know if it's like my brain for I don't know map or some sort, but I feel like if it's crumpled up, it's because he's found his way through that swamp, but it took a while, right, to kind of get to maybe where he's at to, hence the the broken up look kind of thing.
Where's that? So with the I'm going up here to current layer, and so when you have something on multiply, or maybe your opacity is different, and you want to eyedrop that color, well, if you have it on show all layers, or it's gonna just get whatever's displayed on the screen. But if you do current layer, when I go to do that, see the color it's giving me. It looks nothing like that blue that's there, but when I go to use it, you can see it's that same blue. So that's a good way. If instead of before I learned this, I used to go here and I used to go normal, and then I would eyedrop it, and then I would switch it back to multiply.
The back and forth.
Nobody wants to do that. So
nice.
Instead, you can just go up here again in your eyedrop, and it'll say sample, and you just go to current layer. And if you just want to do it, you just do all layers, or even all layers, no adjustments, and that's an easy way to just grab color.
Nice. So I feel like for folks who are quite new to maybe this process, or even just the program itself, like these are the little sort of tips and tricks that Chris is sharing that I guess just makes your life so much easier, right? In terms of the process, streamlining. But it takes time to learn these. So if you are new to it, I mean, you're in the right place to kind of sharpen those character design skills for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is, something I've been doing professionally since about 2010.
Nice.
So, and I went to art school and I did the whole thing. But I was in art school when digital was this was 2005, 2000 to 2009. It's like digital was there, but it wasn't, you didn't go straight to digital. It wasn't like you're going to be working in digital. It was like, oh, you'll probably do some stuff digital, some stuff traditional. Yeah. And so that was a big thing for me to have to also make that jump a little bit.
That transition. I mean, that was definitely one of my questions because watching you kind of design firsthand, I mean, I've seen before of your previous streams, but to see it firsthand, I've been super curious about your background, actually, if you're self-taught or whether you just, from birth, you was an awesome designer, but I just didn't know if it was like, what's the sort of process you've taken to kind of get to where you're at now. But it sounds like obviously you went down that traditional route, the educational route, and then into freelance, or were you, currently now obviously you're working, but full-time, but yeah.
So I went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and then I during that time I started working at a fine art gallery, and so and we did a lot of international street artists, graffiti, but also lowbrow, oil painting, the whole gambit. This is when Juxtapose was exploding, the magazine. I don't know if anybody knows that. So I spent a lot of time between commercial art and then fine art. And after I was done with all that, I got my first jobs working on my buddy's album covers for the M Machine. What am I looking for here? And that was a pretty big deal. And that's how I ended up meeting Skrillex and a lot of these
I
electronic
love you say
producers.
so casually. That's pretty awesome, man. I used to be a
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had it in a while, to be fair, but that takes me back to my university days, Skrillex.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, and at the time,
awesome.
yeah, at the time when it came out, it was something new and pretty
It was
heavy.
big.
And
it was big.
Yeah, and so yeah, that was kind of the early things. And my buddies were who I was living with at the time, called the M Machine. They were releasing under Ausla, which was Skrillex's record label. And so I ended up doing a lot of stuff for him. I did the posters for the Full Flex Express tour that he did on a train through Canada.
Yeah.
And so got to do like a lot of fun things, like went to Outside Lands when he headlined, which was really fun, and got to like hang out backstage. And
is he still making music? I mean, I don't know. I haven't been in that space in a long time.
He just came back.
He's come back.
He's like, I think he spent a lot of time in South America. And like Brazil, working with a lot of artists, and so now he's back with some pretty. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and for anyone who's like
dirty house,
yeah,
it's like dirty house reggaeton, kind of like
it was big for its time. It was big. So anyone doesn't know about that, definitely check. I mean that and you know, bit of design programs is quite a nice hand in hand. But depends what kind of mood you're in. Actually, to be fair, I feel like if you're really focused, it might not be your jam, but each to their own, right?
Yes.
We've got a question just whilst you're in the process of that. Christopher from on YouTube saying, how long did this image take to get to this point?
Good question. It's tough because I plug away every like an hour or two after work or something, but I'm let's get rid of those notes. I would say at this point I've probably put in probably like 10 hours from start to finish. I wouldn't want to spend more than like 20 hours on this. Like that's,
I mean, you got to use the toilet, right? Sometimes if you're gonna,
yeah,
bad joke, yeah.
But so I'm trying to also keep this simple. I know for some people maybe not, but I usually like to really go and render a lot, and this was more playing with texture, trying to keep some of those like really graphic elements intact. And so hopefully 15 hours total on this. Nice. I don't want to spend too much time, especially because it's if I was going to spend a lot more time, there'd probably be a background. It'd be like a full-on painting. And so since this one, I'm trying to keep it to this kind of silhouette, this more of a simplistic style.
Nice. Great question. And again, please keep those sort of questions coming in. And probably a nice time to mention, because we're over that sort of half an hour mark. If you have just joined us, a massive welcome if you're on YouTube or Behance. And today we have character designer and illustrator Chris Blackstock. And today he's in the full force of designing this really cool illustration on Photoshop, which can be sold either online or in person at a convention at an affordable price. So any questions you have for Chris, please do get us in the chat.
And so I'm just kind of running ahead here because I can already know times.
You know what? So, you know to do it.
and so I've just kind of started turning on these layers, and you'll start to see we've got this moss here that's really nice, and it's not something you can really sketch out. Like you can kind of place it in there, but you're kind of waiting for that brush, like okay, you start painting it in, and that stuff's fun too because you kind of build it up as you go. So we're going to work a little bit on that. You can also see started adding some water down here. I think that's mostly turned on. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're mostly caught up with where I was. We got a little rim light up here. That's going to help a lot. So you saw how dark it was up here. And this, when you add this rim light, it kind of helps model that part that's in the shadow. It has, there's another alternate light source that kind of adds a little bit of the mystique to it. So cool. And so I've got my notes now that I wrote ahead of time.
Nice.
This is the stuff that this is what I want to finish either, you know, in the next 40 minutes, or this is what I want finished before before I deliver it for print.
Of course. Nice.
So first things first, I'm just going to do really quick, is I really want to add these scales to these fingers. So I'm going to go to my monster layer right here, and I've got scales already selected. It's on all layers up here, so I can just drop it. And then I'm going to get my brush. And for this brush, since it's just going to be a fill-in, I just want to use just a hard round with a taper. And I can just start. And since I have my shadows on a multiply layer, when I go to add those scales underneath, you can see it already, the shadows are already there, right? It's going to sit on top, so I can just draw underneath. So I'm going to go ahead, kind of just, so you just play God. You just making a creature.
You said that so casually and calmly. I love to say, you've done this before, Chris. I can tell.
Yeah. All artists just have major God complex. Just create and destroy.
Isn't that designer thing in general?
Yeah.
Look at my master.
You create to destroy. So just going to add this, and it's just going to, you know, stuff like this is really what's going to make your print stand out. Add those level of detail that it does so much. Just even those little scales, you know, like it's not a lot, but it already adds some design and texture that also kind of tells you maybe a little more of what this guy's made out of.
What I love as well, I gotta mention, like, it's the attention to detail, but even the small definitions of lighting, even on the sort of finger tip I can see, which was on the kind of top of his head, right? So again, it's those small,
right, you've got that
kind of brings it to life,
right? That little neon, those neon little rim light, right? And that's going to help, you know, why I'm having it right here is it kind of helps connect and pop it right here on the top of that rock. It kind of brings you forward instead of pulling you all the way back here, you know, where maybe you're stuck back there. This will pop you forward. The moss will bring you down. You know, so if you started here, you go up here, and then you come around, and then you end up here, or you could end up here and come around, and then you're going to come right back. So you kind of want the lines to all be the line and the color and the light. You want it to be guiding you around the composition. You don't want to get stuck anywhere. Okay, so scales. Oh, got a little more up there.
And just a quick one, I'm curious to know, and I hope this doesn't throw you off, but whilst you're in the flow of this, is there a particular character design style or even illustrative style that you like that's out there already, like in terms of maybe show? Because I feel like you watch, maybe like me, like a lot of maybe anime or sort of illustration. You mentioned Studio Ghibli before, but like any shows that you watch, you're like, oh, I love the styles.
Yeah,
I've got one in mind straight away, but I'll let you go first.
So I've been Primal has been a big one for me recently.
Okay.
Tartakovsky. I think it's on Max now.
Okay.
I think it was done for Adult Swim.
Cool.
And yeah, Gendy Tartakovsky's done Samurai Jack. I think he directed the Hotel Transylvania, but he's done a ton of he did the new one, the new what's it called? Something unicorn fight. I don't know.
Sorry, I've distracted you. I need that question because I could easily go on a different stream. I apologize if I'm
yeah, but that one's been great because there's no dialogue really. It's just all, let's see, it's just all, you know, it's between this caveman and this T-Rex, and they both, you know, lose their family, spoiler, and they basically are trying to find their family, and they can't talk to each other. It's just grunts and expressions. So you really have to animate everything and to kind of animate all that human
emotions,
an animal, I guess, emotion without words. Really, and the action is just unreal.
The cherry on the cake.
Yeah. Which one? What about you?
Well, I mean, I mentioned as well in the chat, you know, definitely let us know, folks, any illustrative styles or character designs that you've seen. You think, oh, that's awesome. Do you know what comes to mind straight away? And it's more because I was watching 1 and 2 last night, back to back. I'll say Spider-Verse. Absolutely obsessed with that, and I've been watching a few. insane. And if you haven't watched it,
Yeah.
definitely do that. But yeah, it's just because again, this is not I'm more editorial print, right? So for me,
Yes.
having an insight into your world and seeing how illustrators work, I'm in awe because it's very much a talent. But yeah, that's an incredible film in terms of animation.
Oh, it's been that one.
It's
that one. They both are. I mean, it's my oldest one loves Spider-Verse, and then we went and saw the second one, Across the Spider-Verse, was just like
so good.
Unreal. Just so the good amount of detail and animation that they put into that is just yeah, it
mind-blowing, right?
Yeah, just raised the bar. Everybody else is just like, ugh. Yeah, like,
I thought I was good. No, influence, inspiration. Inspiration, my friend. And actually, that's a nice time to mention. If you are watching Adobe Live and you think, oh, I would love to have a chance to jump in this, of course you can. You definitely can. In our little tab in the Behance, you'll see recommendation. Please feel free to submit a recommendation. It could be a friend, family, or even yourself. And who knows, you could be on the next stream. So definitely get recommending. We'd love to see your work. So yeah, my little pun there.
So now I'm just doing a little bit of water effects, just kind of, and this is going to help with the, instead of this just looking cut off, right? We can kind of give it a home.
Yeah.
Home to live in.
But even like the depth, like there's so subtlety to the depth of the sort of, I guess you call it the ripple effect from him going through. It feels like it's quite sluggish, right? Quite, I don't know. That's just mine I get from what I see anyway. Like it's a real effort to kind of get through that.
Yeah. Well, and then maybe that texture too kind of helps feel. It's almost like a thicker,
Yeah, for sure.
Which is kind of how swamps are. Maybe not even necessarily a swamp, but just in the jungle, right? It's nothing's really easy as far as getting around. There's a lot of things in your way. Everything's really thick and lush. So we're just gonna do just to kind of enhance it a little bit.
And what's your the process? What's your what's your kind of setup? Obviously, are you desktop, MacBook? What's your kind of go-to like?
Yeah, so I've got an iMac that I'm working on.
Cool.
And I've got I'm on a 24-inch Cintiq Pro. Cool. So I worked on a 13-inch for like 7 years. Developing carpal tunnel, my best effort to like cripple my hand. And then the last couple of years, maybe it was 2 years ago, or I just said I got to do this, and so went invested it. Best thing I ever did. Gosh, it's so funny because I think if anything, I forget that I should probably zoom in. I've got so much screen for myself.
Share with us, Chris.
Everyone, if you can't see it, please tell me if I need to zoom in. I see it so well on my end, but I know it might not be as big on your screen. So please.
We've got our audience vigorously pressing Command Plus, like trying to zoom in on the screen. Don't worry, friends. You haven't got to do that. Chris can happily zoom in.
Yeah, sorry.
He's got you. We've got a question from Mohammed. Sorry. No, go for it.
I was just saying, even just that little, adding those little white rims, it creates a surface, right? There's surface tension texture that goes really well with that reflected light. Okay. So yeah, what was the question?
We've got a great comment first from Wade, who said it's those little bits of storytelling in just the texture or the way it's drawn that can really make a difference, right? Which we kind of touched on as well. There's all elements which kind of brings it all to life. And question from Mohammed, he's asked, how do you manage the color, the grading compared to the shadow?
Sorry, what's the? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I perhaps maybe explain what you mean, Mohammed, again. I guess
the gradients. Maybe, or
how do you manage to color the grading compared to the shadow? Maybe the contrast perhaps of color, but I could be reading that wrong. Let us know, Mohammed, what you mean again, and then we'll decipher that one. We want to make sure we get it right as well. So
yeah, definitely. Let me see if I can. I want to try to maybe brighten this area too. Second to do it. I don't know if I'm seeing anything here. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to try to put a little more emphasis on this area and just brighten it up just a little bit, because we're right. This is kind of right where this character's standing. So I think if we just highlight this a little bit, it's not a lot, but those little changes in lighting gradation kind of go a long way.
That probably feeds in quite nicely now to Mohammed. That he's explaining what he meant, and that makes total sense. So that's basically, how do you manage the colorimetry, which I had to Google that because I'm not going to pretend like I knew what that was. And that basically means, unless you know already, it's the science of measurement of color. So I guess the kind of balance of different colors we have happening. So it's a great question, Mohammed.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure there is a science, obviously, to it with color theory.
What's your science, Chris? You tell us your.
Yeah, my science is it's really just, it's a feel, right? You can start to see maybe if I'm losing my character with the rocks or the background or the water, or there's competing points of interest that maybe I need to push back, and maybe I can. So it's like, what are my tools to push that back? Lessen the detail, or maybe in some cases darken it to push it back, and with cooler colors, or sometimes it could be lightening it with atmospheric perspective, and there's going to be some atmosphere in between, so you can lighten it with distance. So for me, it's kind of a push and pull as I work. I don't know exactly yet where some of those things are going to happen.
And that's the beauty, though, right? I don't know. Yeah. I feel like that's the beauty of the everyone is a completely different design, like, you know, process of how they operate. And I mean, that's probably reason, hopefully, why the folks sort of tune in for the Adobe Live, right? To sort of see how, you know, yourself and other creatives kind of find their own design methodology and way to see it. So it's kind of subjective in that way, but
yeah, I mean, like,
for it come to life.
You know, there's ways of kind of just, as you're going, you can just add a clipping mask, and, you know, maybe I just want to darken this a little bit, you know, and just kind of push it just to kind of keep maybe more of the focus I want to keep around this entryway. And so everything kind of gets darkened around that, right? So you go from this to this, and it's kind of bringing focus in on this character here. So there's little things like that you can do, and you can always play with the, you know, how dark you want to make it, but stuff like that you can do that also helps on top of it. And you can do that with like a big soft round brush or gradients. You could do a really light opacity and build it up. There's all kinds of things you can do with that.
I know we touched on it at the beginning as well, but like the fact that you've still got this white border on the edge, it's awesome, because like you said, you added a background, it maybe kind of not dilutes the illustration, but your real focal point now is literally in the center, simply for the fact that everything from the edges is obviously blank. So like, I love the fact that you've got this kind of white border. I mean, I already see it on a t-shirt, right? Even with the annotations, I kind of feel that would be quite an awesome t-shirt to have. Just saying,
well, and that's the thing, is
I'd purchase it.
Yeah, you kind of like, the whole idea is like, it's the composition itself is its own character, right? It's this big silhouette. Sure. And that it is too. It's like borderless, so it's not going to be, when you go to print it out, it's not this thing where if you printed it out on something that, you know, maybe didn't have a framework or something, it still can kind of live on its own. I could add stuff to it if I wanted to put this on maybe I want this to be my banner for my light box, and so this is going to give me space to add my name at the top and what I do, and I can restructure it, crop it.
Nice.
Yeah, I just made this so that it kind of gives me options. If I can go and add a background, I can do all these things afterwards. I've kind of set myself up for that, where it can grow from this, but I really wanted to kind of create this own kind of freestanding illustration.
Nice. Plus, as well, I think because you know so well the Adobe Live hemisphere, how it works, time goes ridiculously quick, right? So
yeah, I know. I'm already like, I can't. Yeah. I'm already running out of time, man.
It's already an hour in, and again, just doing my job as a host, I'll flag that we're an hour in. But also, if you have just joined us again, welcome. If you've been here already, awesome. Today we have again the awesome illustrator. I keep saying awesome. Illustrator Chris Blackstock, because he's awesome. That's why I say it. Character design illustrator, working on a very cool illustrative piece, which can hopefully be sold either online or at a convention. So yeah, any questions you have about his design process, the shading, even the brushes that he's using, please let us know in the chat. And I can see Wade has kindly put these links to his work in the chat as well. So definitely click on that after the stream, of course. But yeah, stay with us and let's see where it goes from there.
So here I'm just kind of wanted to add a little more of the moss. So I'd done some of it, but I definitely wanted there to be more.
I love the brush stroke, the fluffiness that kind of comes off of the the moss. It's just
it's pretty
gross, but
awesome.
Also cool.
Yeah. So maybe fill in some of these gaps too, because I can go back. Because what I've done is that this, actually I forgot about that. This is all sitting on top. So I can just go in, make sure this is all filled in.
Nice.
Looks good. You know, maybe there's a little extra. Just kind of feather it.
Great question from Peter. So on that topic of printing, do you adjust your colors for CMYK printing?
Yeah. So right now, I'm just working in CMYK. So there are plenty of print shops now, especially like dropship places, you know, like Imprint and other things. Like you don't have to. Gosh, I just printed a, comic book, and I didn't have to convert anything to CMYK.
My mind is
they actually wanted it. They wanted it RGB.
Jeez.
So for this specifically, I just kept it at CMYK. I think one of the reasons I wanted to do it is it actually helps, because if it's an RGB, you can really push colors and effects, like you can, the contrast, but when you go to print that, it's not going to look like that. You're not going to get those you're not going to get those like insanely saturated rich colors. They'll be good, but they're not going to be a computer screen. So I feel like having it in CMYK ahead of time helps, like with that temptation of like really pushing these things, and be like, it'll kind of keep it grounded and let you know what you can actually do with that.
Nice. So we've got Peter actually. So going back to what he actually shared his experience, which is great because we love to hear the experiences here. He said, I did a children's book in CMYK and it came out muted. So again, what you kind of mentioned about having that sharp punchiness of certain colors, right? It doesn't come out the way you really, really do want. And to be fair, a lot of it is trial and error. I mean, I kind of work in print, and I always think, you're going to have to do
you almost have to do proofs.
Mock-ups. Always, just for sanity check as well, right? I think more than demoralizing than seeing your work not in the way you wanted it to be in print.
Well, and the hard thing is that every printer's different. If you're going to a different company, if you're going, like, they all have their own methods. I mean, obviously they're calibrating it along certain guidelines, but you kind of never know exactly what you're gonna get. You have an idea, but you also do just have to test, see how it goes. If they do proofs, get a proof. Not everybody does proofs these days anymore, but
that's so true. I was gonna say as well, actually,
it's a bummer.
I was gonna say, like, being my little top tip again, because working in print, it's it helps to have that kind of go-to print, to have like a nice relationship with print, especially if you're in that space of print, because many times where we want to be perfect, but we're not, of course, and then we make those kind of mistakes where a good printer sometimes flags those if they can, and it saves you time, obviously cost as well, but then also you build a relationship and what to expect when you go to print. I can see Peter said, I think I need a different printer. Whatever you don't put the name of the printer in, I don't want to out them out like that. But yeah, it's a bit of a trial and error of knowing who to go to. And but when you find a good printer, hold on to them, because especially when you're working in books, editorial, which is kind of my world, that's our holy grail, really, having a good printer, right? It's kind of know to go to. Or for any creative, for that matter, really. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, because especially if that's something that you want to charge money for and want to be beautiful in somebody's house or wherever they're going to put it in their studio. You don't want to put all this work in and then spend all this money on a print and you're like, doesn't look as good as it did on my computer screen.
I made it blue and it comes out purple. What's good?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really terrible print, to be fair. If that's the case, that's a completely different color. But there we go.
Leave that printer.
Just parachute out. Yeah. Because the proofs can be pricey, which is true. But again, it's that depending on the project, and sometimes for sanity's sake, I always say if it's a big print run, you kind of put in that effort for no stress down the line. But each to their own. But yeah, back into Chris's world.
It's true. Okay, let's see. So now I'm thinking like maybe we can try to add some grass. Let's see. If I can get this.
I've got to ask, when you're kind of thinking of these kind of sort of parts to add on to the rocks, and do you find yourself going online and researching maybe moss on rocks to try and get I mean, you probably know what they look like, but yeah, like a visual.
No, there's definitely plenty of time spent looking up reference all the time. I mean, that's part of the brainstorm in the beginnings, which I guess I didn't show, but
no,
I'll definitely go and kind of look things up, see what I need, for colors, for all kinds of different things, compositions, but a lot of really just figuring out how things work. Because sometimes, you have an idea, you're like, oh, I know how that is. But then, other things you're like, I can't visualize it. I can't see it. I need to see some photographs or something that's helping me do that. And so, yeah.
Nice.
Reference is an illustrator's best friend.
Nice.
So just kind of adding some fun little texture stuff.
It's very cool to sort of see this kind of come to life. And I mean, I've definitely got perhaps best job in the world to see the hosts, to see the designers come on and illustrate. But we had one a few weeks ago, and again, every other illustrator is quite often, but everyone is so different and know your unique style. And I think that's the beauty when you watch these streams, right? You get to see how our community has their own kind of vision and see how it's implemented on these streams. So it's really cool to see it come to life, man.
Yeah, I mean, with a tool, as powerful as Photoshop and how it's grown over the years, it really is. It's something else, what you can accomplish and what you can get. And it just never, it's like the tools are always changing and growing and evolving. And so does your techniques and kind of how you work, and you find different ways of improving and getting faster. And I think that's why Adobelive is so cool. That's why I love being a part of it, is it's constantly learning new ways of how to engage with my own artwork through a digital space. Because, traditionally, you kind of know the tools that are available to you, but in the digital space, it's like you're kind of always on this path of discovery. You're like, wait, you can do what?
My mind is
okay. Yeah, that changes everything. So.
It took me 10 hours last time, and that was 10 minutes.
Yeah, what?
How did you do that? We've got another question. Oh no, go on. What are you gonna say?
Oh no, I was saying don't get mad at people because they can do it way faster than you.
No, that's and to be fair, even touching on the beauty of having Behance as a community, there is so much wealth of knowledge in terms of folks that are out there, and it's all there to kind of be inspired, right? And everyone's in their own kind of path, which I think is quite nice. But understanding how you can take influence to kind of create your own. But we've got a question which is quite good, I think, for anyone who's kind of starting out in the illustration kind of world. Have you got any references that you could recommend, Chris, that would maybe enhance or help with illustrating skills? Maybe any blogs that you see or books you recommend, or any spaces for those kind of starting out, maybe?
Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to.
Plus Adobelive, of course. That's the obvious one.
Of course. Which you hear already, it really just depends on what you're pursuing. For me, a big thing was going to school and doing a lot of foundation work, studying the masters, doing newsprint charcoal drawings, still life paintings and oils, kind of even going and taking photography classes and being in a dark room and like all of that traditional work and just kind of foundational study goes a long way. It's tough, I think, nowadays because it's time and effort and money, and not everybody has access to that. But I would say trying to participate in that space on your own is I don't think it's ever wasted time. But yeah, if you're doing something like where my space that I'm in, which is entertainment and animation, I mean, I can't tell you how many books I have the art of, you know, where because getting a job in animation can be really difficult, and so you want to get your portfolio ready as much as possible. And one way of doing that is, you know, you want to be ready day one when they hire you, right? You don't want it to be where they have to hire you and then train you, because nowadays they're most likely not going to do that. True. Like there's too many people out there. There's too many great candidates. And so you're going to look at these books and you're going to kind of go through and see like, what do I have to do? Like, you know, what do I need? As a character designer, it's okay. I need to have turnarounds and expression sheets, and I really need to know how to understand shape and proportions and character and life and, you know, story, like narrative, because that's your main job, right? Is you're trying to bring characters and stories to life.
No, I agree. And I think, I mean, just to add on that as well, I always think a lot of it is research as well, right? Because the things you learn, obviously the idea of traditional route of education, some self-taught, some education, but in our case, we both went to uni, and I do think there's a lot of things that benefits you get, maybe hands-on things. You mentioned something, screen printing, life drawing, these things which kind of comes as part of the course, which I think is quite cool because you're with other students, it's very hands-on, and when you're in the actual world of work, which maybe some folks can understand there as well, it's you don't maybe get that time maybe that you had when you were in education, where it's more hands-on because time, money, and so forth. But doing your research, exploring, and kind of knowing what's good for you before you kind of maybe set out into particular industries and roles, so that you're actually, like you said, ready for day one when the call comes up your way.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. You know, people are always just like, "Oh, is school worth it?" And I always say, most definitely yes, because you build a community, and there's other ways of doing it, but nothing's really like going to school with other people and going through the same things that they're going through and building these deep connections, because that's going to carry you for the rest of your life. I mean, you know, the reason why I got a lot of the jobs that I got is because I knew somebody that I either went to school with or went to a party with or went to a gallery show or did an event. It was all interconnected in the end. I love that. You know,
I feel like, I mean, again, obviously you're in, where are you based? You're California?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
Yeah. You're in LA. I'm in London. It's the creative communities obviously are very different, but again, I always feel like we're all almost connected in a sense where, especially in London, I mean, you're only kind of one, maybe two friends away from knowing each other in terms of our creative space, which is cool as well, right? Because you kind of learn. We've got some folks, I can see they're coming in. We've got Izzy. Hey, Izzy, how's it going? Said, hey, Wade. So she said, this is great advice. I'm taking it as always chase the better version of yourself, in brackets, in your skills.
Yep, that's
very true.
It's great advice.
There we go.
So here's another thing that, as I'm adding highlights sometimes because I'm not always great with color. Let's say I'm just like, okay, I just want to add some yellow into this, and I can't do it just through the color wheel. I'll just pull up my color picker and just go to yellow and just click in a higher percentage of yellow. Nice. You know, that's, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've got it now.
So simple. Wade's comment, I'm creeping back into my more traditional these days, but just because I enjoy it. That's the key. We got to enjoy what you do, right? I always say, regardless of deadlines and timeframes and all these things, like that's real world, but you've got to also enjoy. I mean, our craft is, regardless of what industry you're in the creative space, you've got to still enjoy it, right? That's got to be the focal point.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't do it otherwise, because
yeah,
it's gonna.
I mean, folks do. You got to pay the bills, right? But still, it's
well, I mean, I
it's
guess what I mean is that it's to be really successful at it and to make a living at it. It's like it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of sacrifice, and you just want to make sure that, right, maybe if you're not getting that enjoyment through your job, that you make time either early in the morning, late at night, whenever you can fit it in, lunchtime, that you're doing something for yourself. Because if you're just doing art, and even as much as you love it, if you're just doing it for a paycheck, it's going to burn you out, and you're not going to enjoy it very much. It's going to be hard to keep that going for a long time. So make space for your creativity, and don't forget why you started it in the first place.
I feel like this could definitely be another stream, and I know obviously we are blitzing through this stream, and that is, I mean, that's a topic in itself, which is awesome. But and I could definitely spend a lot more time talking about it. But again, any comments, let us know in the chat. But this is a nice time to mention we've got about 15 minutes or so until we'll do a nice little wrap up. So
okay,
there we go, Chris.
All right,
on the home stretch.
Home stretch. Let's see. Probably do a little more detail here. Do some darker.
Got some nice comments coming through. You got Peter saying, "Great stream." Thank you, Peter. It's nice to hear. Always nice to hear.
Think you have enough time?
I was saying to a friend, I was like, do we need 36 hours in a day? But then would that still be enough? And also, is that healthy?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
The body needs sleep and food. Especially you got children. Enough. That's a whole different stream.
Oh yeah, that is definitely.
We came on.
It's a whole different beast for sure.
Maybe next stream we'll cover that one. Dad life with Illustrator.
I was gonna say, yeah, how to navigate being a dad and an artist. Yeah, it's been fun watching my 6-year-old really starting to get into drawing.
Nice.
I've been really careful to not push too hard on it. You know, I kind of want him to discover it.
Wandering hand coming, the art director hand on top of the other hand, just like,
yeah, like really, really avoiding doing any of that. And it's been really cool
nice.
Watching his kind of journey. Yeah, man, it's so fun.
Chris, are you suggesting that we do a father and son stream for our next
hey,
the collab is going to be coming on? Who knows?
I think that might be a
child to work day.
Yeah.
Yes, Wade. So true. Do we ever figure out what the eyes are? Multiple creatures, one creature? Question mark. Emoji.
I mean, I guess, yeah. You know, it's up to you guys. For me, it was always
the kids.
Oh my god, yeah. Something more terrifying than this.
Can you imagine one creature with that many eyes? It's just dark, man.
Yeah. To me, it was always his little babies in there. You know, it's like he stumbled upon it. And
let us know, Wade. What do you think? Let us know in the chat. We had one before, I think, actually, but we want to see more. Whilst Chris is in this home stretch, throw some ideas there. What are those eyes? I think someone said a portal to Adobe Express, but that's a whole different thing. Which I still love.
I mean, yeah, it could be. It could be. I kind of like the portal. It could totally change into a portal. That'd be a cool idea too. Let's see. It's gonna add another highlight here. Just do some lasso. I don't think it was going to be much. Let's see. That's okay. It's not much, but pops it out just a little bit.
Peter's comments are, I like the mystery of the eyes. There we go. Maybe we don't even need to think of an object. Maybe that's the beauty of it, right? It's something, but we don't know what it is, and that's a good thing, maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be, it doesn't really need to be anything, right? It can just kind of be whatever you want it to be.
Man, I love Wade's comment. This is getting really profound now. You opened the floodgates here, Chris. He said, I think they're both unaware that the creature. Let me start again. I think they're both unaware the creature that lurks within. Some things live in the dark for fear of light. Others feed on the darkness within. Yes. So true.
Thank you, Wade.
I mean,
thank you, Wade.
We got to have that on a t-shirt, right, alongside his illustration. Just go to a few like
I can't have a stream without being overshadowed by Wade. It's impossible.
Was that a pun? Is that a It's not an Adobe live stream if we don't have a few puns on. Like
so I don't know how far I'll get with this because I know we're almost done here, but the idea was to also get rid of this this plant line, which I will by the end of, because I only want the two characters to be outlined. And so with something like this, where I've based it off of that, you can kind of see it's a little bit messy. But this is all, again, it's all in clipping mask. So let's say I turn those off. When I go to add into that shape, what's really cool is that even, let's say you added, oops, it's locked. Sorry. Don't lock the pixels. So if I added down here, it's going to continue whatever that shadow shape is. You can kind of see that edge there. It'll continue down. So if I did like a big shape, you don't really have to worry about it. As you paint the shadow getting ruined or something. So I would basically go in and kind of clean up some of this. Not too much, but
nice.
Just enough so that it's not, you want it to be as smooth. And you can even add a little bit of smoothing. Sometimes that helps.
Whilst you're doing that without sort of swaying, how do you, so a question from Peter, how do you decide what your line color will be? He always does black when he kind of tends to work.
Yeah, so as far as the line color goes, it really depends. If you're going for very much like a comic book style, you really want that shape to pop, then just black is the best, right? I mean, that's a great, it really encases everything. It really shows your line work. Since I really want this to kind of reflect more of an animated like film or something, most of that line work is usually a darker, so for example, it's like I would take this color of the skin, we'll get off that, and then I would darken it up, and that would kind of be, I'd do a darker value of that, and that would be the line color. So I would do it all in black, but then as I color it and I figure out what my colors are, I lock those pixels and I go back and I recolor it, and it helps push the line back just a little bit, and it gives, I think you're able to kind of do a little more with light and volume, because if you have that black line, it flattens everything. So just know, if you're going to be outlining things, it's going to flatten your whole piece no matter what. Even if you added a ton of stuff to it, if you're still encasing it in that black line, it's going to be really hard to kind of have a lot of dimension. So that's why I really didn't want to use black. With these softer colors, you kind of you can do a little bit more with it, and it's not as the contrast isn't as stark, and so you can kind of play a little more with color. Just even with these lines on these plants, right? Let's say I just made them black. All of a sudden
So definitive, isn't it? It's yeah, you see the difference.
Right. And so now these plants really stand out, right? And if that's not what I want, because to me, having it like that, it feels very distracting all of a sudden. It creates these high contrast areas I don't really want. And so when I take that away, all of a sudden now that character comes forward. I don't have that line work that's coming out of me. And even with, if we go back to and then that reduced line work where it's kind of the opacity or, the colors closer to what the local color is, it's not as that I could even maybe be okay with. Because it's pushed back. It's not overtaking some of the other images.
Nice.
So.
Chris said, good advice. Thank you. So here we go. We've got some great advice from man himself.
And I thought I'd finish it, but I obviously am not going to. But this will be finished and posted.
Nice.
To the Instagram. This will be available at Lightbox. Table 216. See everybody there. I know.
Drinks are on Chris. The Milky Bars are on Chris.
I know Adobe will be there and all the other big companies. And if you've never been to Lightbox, super fun. It's Bobby Chu's big entertainment expo. It's rad.
Sick.
Have you ever heard of it, Kieran?
No. I've well, actually, to be fair, maybe I've seen it online a few times, but no. I see we're over in London. We don't get we don't know much of stuff like. Well, maybe it's just me actually, but yeah, we need to know more.
Yeah, it's kind of the competitor to CTN Expo, which was the big animation expo for a long time. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you just get to see so many different concept artists working in the industry and demonstrations, talks, new tech, all that fun stuff.
Sounds like Disneyland for illustrators. I don't know.
It is.
Is that a good way to describe it? I don't know.
Yes, absolutely,
cool.
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Sounds awesome, to be fair.
Let's see.
So I have to be that guy because I would happily watch this for another hour, easily an hour and a half. But we have got about 2 minutes, Chris, and you know the deal. When it'd be nice to do a little recap. 2 minutes. I know.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Wow.
Okay.
Nice little recap
of
what we've done for our folks.
Okay.
You were so in the flow of it as well, man. So I could see you zoomed in and it was like, I was getting real now.
Okay, so we started out, let's see here. We started out with our basic brainstorm ideas, trying to really keep it limited, maybe character to central composition, no borderless. Decided to go with the top left A. Oops. Oh no. What happened? So get rid of those guys. So we blew it up, worked out the details of it, did a final sketch or close enough. And then it's just going to jump into this, but
here's what I made earlier.
Yeah.
Nice.
Essentially we, it might be an easier way to just write it. We blocked in our colors, right? And after that, we everything, because that kind of creates your silhouette shapes, and then you're able to look at the lighting. So lighting, and then all of your shadow shapes. And then as we did that, we started looking at texture and even, push and pull with the composition.
Nice. So cool to sort of come to
your color.
Come together.
And then you start to look at little things like details and you know, how can you enhance this painting and add all of those little fine things that are going to make it something special for people to look at more than 5 seconds, right? You want to keep people engaged. We have a simple story, a boy, a monster, a mysterious cave,
and one single Adobe live stream. I love it. Oh, Chris, I mean, I can see everyone in the comments saying absolutely positive things about the stream. So that's a nice time to kind of wrap up now, because that time has come, Chris. But it's been an absolute pleasure to host you, dude, and to sort of see your work come to fruition. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Really love being here.
So it's a nice time to kind of wrap up, and just to say, so we got our next stream coming up very shortly. In this week's art battle, we have Penny Doodles is challenging Arthur the artist Abdon in Adobe Fresco. So keep it locked, my friends, because that'll be up next. So until next time, my friends, we'll see you very shortly. Take care. Ciao.
All right, everybody.